Soll ich noch mal kurz sagen, die erste Frage von Waltraud bezog sich darauf, dass sie sagte, Besatzung beenden, wie es hier anscheinend gefordert wurde, mehrfach, habe ich gar nicht so gehört, aber egal, das sei doch ein zu kurz gegriffener Vorschlag, das würde nur zu einer Zwei-Staaten-Lösung führen, wobei dann Israel das Problem gelöst hätte für sich und nun auch nur noch die Palästinenser aus Israel loswerden müsste. Das war also Ihre skeptische Frage. An wen? Alle. An beide.
Right. I think the first question Ali would deal with in any case, but I will just say that I agree, of course, that one of the dangers of the two-state solution is indeed that it can seal the fate of the Palestinians inside Israel as a domestic issue of a Jewish state and not an issue which is at all relevant for the international community. And I think it's part of the basic problem of the two-state solution, that it shrinks the Palestine issue geographically, demographically. A peace solution is successful when it is inclusive, when it includes as many people as possible who are affected by a conflict. The peace process of the two-state solution excludes most of the people who are victims of the conflict, and therefore has very little chance of surviving, and because of that there will be also a danger for the Palestinian community inside Israel. The second question, I do agree, it was rather a comment, not a question. I do agree that there is a bigger international project in place. I don't think it's a colonialist project. I think it's an imperialist project, and there is a difference between imperialism and colonialism. But I remember being a former member of the Israeli Communist Party, and I remember the meetings with very nice friends from the Palestine, from the PFLP and the PDFLP, from people who tried to convince us, and I remember that from Zionist history as well, that we should wait for a kind of an international revolution, and that would bring with it the liberation of Palestine. Well, the international revolution hasn't come, and Palestine is not liberated. And therefore I say that while, of course, in principle, I would like to be part of a larger project of transformation, I think we all are committed to one specific cause in life, inspired by the universal cause. My sense is that if I were born in South Africa to a white family, during the apartheid days, I would put apartheid in South Africa before Palestine. And nobody could have blamed me for doing that. I am putting Palestine at the center. And because I said before, it's not a complex story, I think we are entitled to move on, even at the price of not totally undermining the international project of imperialism, the problems of capitalism, and the very dismal record of human rights elsewhere. I think that what we are missing in the case of Palestine is an understanding that this is not about a quality of life. It's about life itself. It's not about coexistence between Arabs and Jews. It's about the existence of Palestinians. We don't have time. We don't have time. This is urgent. This is very urgent. The way that the Israeli military and political elite understands the situation is the following. We have a moment of opportunity to finalize the Zionist project by determining what part of Palestine would be ours through negotiations or through unilateral actions. Doesn't matter. And we'll determine how many Palestinians would be there and under what conditions. And we can still do it because of American support, because of European support, because of Arab impotence, because of the fragmentation of the Palestinian condition, all these things. And I think what we are trying to convey to you, because we are not alone, because we are part of a growing civil society of people from Israel, from Palestine, from outside of Palestine, we are not afraid of politicians. We are not afraid of political elites. We don't buy into the story that those who have money and power are the only people who can determine the fate of other people. We believe that we can change it as well, and we will continue to do this. And therefore, in the case of Palestine, I think we should focus on Palestine in this meeting and in this project, without, of course, forgetting the international dimension. Finally, the positive side of Zionism, according to Jeff Alper. It's always difficult because these are all good friends of mine. Really, they are. I mean, we have been in the movement or in the struggle for so many years. But I think you need to get out of Israel to get rid of even the last remaining little viruses that are called Zionism. It's difficult. Felicia knows it. It's not easy to clean it. Really, believe me. When you are there, and I think it makes sense, when you are there, when you live there, of course there are positive, it's not the positive side of Zionism. Zionism, as far as the Palestinians are concerned, as the late Edward Said had said, has nothing good to offer. Not even like this. As far as Jews are concerned, of course. Of course, my family, who was kicked out of Germany, and had they stayed, they would have been killed by the Nazis. Some of them found a refuge in Palestine. And the Zionist movement brought them over there. I love the Hebrew language. Fine. And we have a very good medical system, not a bad educational system. But so did the whites in South Africa have it. And probably had the Nazis been allowed to continue, maybe Germany would have been quite a nice and comfortable state for Aryans, undoubtedly. So Zionism has some positive sides, but this has nothing to do with the Palestinians. It is bad news, but I think, seriously speaking, that at the bottom line, every person, even if he's a Zionist, is entitled to aspire to decent, respectable, and dignified human life. And the only way of making people in Israel enjoying, like many other people around the world, dignified, respectful life is to get rid of Zionism. So I don't think we should, in any case, give any good marks to Zionism, because if we do that, we separate the Zionist project from its victims. And we cannot. Thank you.
Ich glaube, jetzt sollten wir diese Fragen beantworten, und anschließend haben wir noch eine kleine Runde, und dann müssen wir leider schließen. Es ist klar, dass es da großen Diskussionsbedarf gibt, aber wir können ja auch noch nachher uns miteinander unterhalten, direkt. Eigentlich nachher, ja. Ja.
Are we answering now? Yeah, okay, sorry. I missed it. There's two short points, and the rest Ali will deal with, I'm sure. About two points which come out from the question. One has to do with the distribution of labor in the movement, I think, and what we try to do for the cause of Palestine. And the other one has to do with generally the Jewish situation in a post-conflict Palestine, a one-state solution, and in it, how do I define myself? I'll come to that in the end. I think that a very important issue is a distribution of labor. What is everyone doing for the cause that we believe in? And I really think that it's for the first time through the BDS campaign, through the boycott, divestment and sanction campaign, it's for the first time that Europeans, and I will talk about Europeans, have a very clear mandate of what they can do. I don't think they are invited enthusiastically to help Palestinians and Jews to decide of what is the best way to live after the conflict is over. This is something which would have to be dealt by the people themselves. The refugees, the Palestinians who live in Palestine, and the Jews who live in what used to be Palestine. This is not a question for the German left to decide whether there would be a two-state solution or a one-state solution. This is our problem. The mandate for the German people in particular, but to Europeans in general, is to redress the balance, to change the way the political system in the West and in Germany is working. It's not a very democratic system when it comes to Palestine. The vast majority of people in Europe, and this is even scientifically proved nowadays with the help of surveys and statistical research, the vast majority of people in Europe are pro-Palestinians and support the Palestinian cause. And the governments do not reflect this support. So this is not a democratic society when it comes to the question of Palestine. So you have a role. It's unbelievable that German members of parliament and ministers are afraid to talk about Israel. This is not, I don't accept any of their explanations, even in the Linke Party, by explaining to us that you have to understand this is Germany. This is Germany, and that's why you have to speak, not the other way around. This is Germany, and therefore I cannot speak. This is what we are looking for. We are looking for something that we already got there, and you have already got there, and I think the whole society around us should get to. And the distribution of labor means that turning the state of Israel into a pariah state, because it is a rogue state, is something that only you can do. And this is enough to put on your plate. And I don't want the one-state or two-state debate in this respect undermine the solidarity movement in Europe. It doesn't make any sense. You can still work with people who I think wrongly believe that for some reason a two-state solution is a viable solution, but you can still work with them in boycotting the next, I don't know, Israeli opera that comes to Berlin, or the next conference on human rights with 3 Israeli experts on human rights. They are experts on human rights, but they should go to a different conference, not to the conference on human rights. Finally, about definition and the Jews. I think that the Palestinians in this distribution of labor have an agency, as we say in English, and definitely Ali addresses this in his book, and many others do. What is the place of the Jews in a liberated state, in a democratic state? And I think that exactly the model of a secular democratic state is one where I don't have to define myself. I don't have to define myself in a secular democratic state. The only place I have to define myself is when the state says it has a national identity, an ethnic identity, a religious identity. If the state has an identity, I have to decide whether my identity fits the identity of the state, or if my identity is problematic because it does not fit the identity of the state. But if the state says, as I think we both believe in, a state for all its citizens, then my definition is, in that state, I am a citizen of the state. And it's nobody's business what is my religion, my affiliation, and what do I do in my bedroom in the afternoon. Nobody's business. And then but I'm open-minded. I think that this is such a big revolution in the life of all of us that when my friends, and I have very good friends, talk about a binational solution because they feel that Jews would have trouble in totally giving up the idea of a collective ethnic identity, that after, as Azmi Bishara says, after 3 generations of sort of Jewish existence in Palestine, there is a local ethnic Jewish identity. And there is, we know that there is. And that this identity, at least for a while, would have to be respected within either a binational state or a multicultural state. I have no problem in engaging with it, but I think, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, what is really important, if you notice, what we are doing here is what we should have done 63 years ago. We are asking the Palestinians to discuss the place of the Jews in their homeland. Whereas the Zionist movement says, we will tell the Palestinian what would be their fate in the future homeland. And the Zionist answer until today is, you have no place in your own homeland. The Palestinian answer is, whether it's a binational or a secular democratic state, is, you have a place. You have a place in our homeland, although you came as colonizer. Although you came as settlers, but you are third generation there, you have a place there, we'll discuss this place, but we can only do it as free people, as someone said yesterday. Okay.
So the choice, the fact is, Jews will be a minority. The question is, how will they exist as a minority? Will they exist as an apartheid minority ruling over the majority, which is the direction they seem to want to go? Or will they exist as a community among the other communities in the country? And I believe they should exist as the latter. And recognize also the cost that Zionism has imposed on Jews and their cultures. Because Zionism tries to create a monoculture. A single, you may have seen the former chief rabbi of Israel, Ovadia Yosef, recently, Abdullah Yusuf, who he was born as, in Iraq. Every Saturday in his sermon, he says, curse those Arabs and damn them, those snakes, those dogs, whatever. The other day he called for a plague on the Arabs. Well, Ovadia Yusuf is an Arab. So when Abdullah Yusuf, the spiritual leader of Shas, calls for a plague on the Arabs, who's he calling a plague on? See, the majority of Jews in Israel today, are of Arab origin. This is something people don't realize. So Zionism has created a situation where you're not allowed to be a Jew and an Arab. Liberation means that a Jew can be an Arab and an Arab can be a Jew also. So I believe that an end to Zionist apartheid will also liberate Jews and free them from the cultural restrictions that Zionism imposes on them, and allow them to rediscover or recreate or develop or whatever all the aspects of Jewish heritage and culture that existed all around the world and in the Arab world as well. And some things will stay. The Hebrew language, I also have done my best to learn Hebrew. I'm not fluent. But I also think Hebrew is a beautiful language. You know, there's no reason not to learn Hebrew. You know, the beautiful thing about language is you can say anything you want in it. You don't have to say Zionist things in Hebrew. You can say anti-Zionist things in Hebrew. So I have no problem with the Hebrew language. I think it's wonderful. Its future will be secure. The question is, the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be. So we don't have a choice about the demographics. We only have a choice of how we relate to each other. And we have to make good choices.
Ja, es tut mir wahnsinnig leid. Okay. Also ganz ehrlich gesagt, ich habe das Gefühl, es sind gerade auch sehr schöne abschließende Worte gefallen. Und wir haben... Ja.